Good afternoon. I will call to order the March 5th meeting of the Minneapolis City Planning Commission. My name is Matt Brown. I serve as president of the commission. I'm joined today by Commissioners Ellison, Kronzer, Magrino, Schrader, Sweezy, Cogill, and Rockwell. At this time, I'll ask that any mobile devices are silenced, and we'll move on with our meeting. Our first item of business today is to approve the actions from the February 20th meeting. May I have a motion to approve those actions?
So moved.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. Next, we'll move on to organizing our agenda. You can find hard copies of the agenda in the hallway. We'll determine which items will be considered on consent and which will be discussed. So starting at the top of the agenda, item number 1 is the Carbonda addition at 243, 247, 247 and a half, and 249 Chicago Avenue, 811 Washington Avenue South, and 800 and a half 3rd Street South. That's a preliminary and final plat. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 1? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 2 is at 2514 and 2601 Broadway Street Northeast. That is a minor subdivision. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 2? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 3 is interstate development at 600 Kasota Avenue, and that is a conditional use permit for truck sales, service, or repair. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 3? See no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 4 is at 818 Lowry Avenue North. That's an expansion of a non-conforming use related to a wall sign. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 4? Seeing no one, we'll put item 4 on consent. Item 5 is at 2841 Oakland Avenue. That's a change of non-conforming use. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 5? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 6 is at 4351 Chicago Avenue. That's a conditional use permit and site plan review for an automobile repair facility. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 6? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 7 is Rana Village at 2900 Pleasant Avenue South. Several applications for a new multifamily building there. I know Commissioner Kronzer had a question about that one, so we'll discuss item 7. And just so I have a sense, is anyone here to speak on item 7 aside from the applicant? So there's no one else here. Item 8 is 38th Street Station at 3752 Hiawatha Avenue, 2922 and 2924 38th Street East, and 3731 through 3805 29th Avenue South. Several applications for a new mixed-use development there. We'll discuss item 8. And is there anyone aside from the applicant who's here to speak on item 8? Just so I have an idea. So we do have one person here for that item. Then finally, item 9 is the East Side Storage and Maintenance Facility at 340 27th Avenue Northeast, 2601 through 2651 University Avenue Northeast, and 2547 5th Street Northeast. Several applications for a public maintenance facility. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 9? Is there anyone here for item 9? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. So our agenda as amended is as follows. Items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9 will be on consent, and we'll discuss items 7 and 8. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. We have no committee of the whole consent agenda today, so we'll move on to the public hearing portion of our meeting. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing for the items on the consent agenda. Again, that's items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 9. Once again, is anyone here for any of those items? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, and commissioners may have a motion to approve the consent agenda. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. Next, we'll move on to our items for discussion. We'll start with item 7. And staff is Mr. Hanauer. Commissioner Kronzer, I know you had a question. Is there anything you'd like staff to focus on in their presentation?
My two questions resolve around the public promenade, what the actual design is for paving and landscaping, and then just general exterior lighting on the project.
For the promenade along the greenway on the north side of the project, the applicant is maintaining what they showed in their previous proposal, 2016 proposal, of having pedestrian lamps, 12-foot high pedestrian lamps on the north side of the promenade. I'll look into some of the civil plans here, and the applicant can speak to this, of decorative or the concrete pavers that would be proposed. I'll get more details on that. And the conditions, there was two conditions that are part of the project. One, that there would not be any gates on either side to allow free movement. And the other one that was not included in here was ensuring that this was for the variance to allow the promenade as proposed in 2016, that the lighting definitely be a part of the final design. So let me see if I can find the materials. And I could leave it there if that's helpful, and then look through my information, and maybe the applicant can talk about the specific material that's proposed. But I can limit it to that for my presentation. And the project is just looking to add that 6th floor and some additional square footage, but the number of units actually go down because of the greater amount of 3 and 4 bedroom units in the project.
All right. And commissioners, are there any other questions of staff? If there are none, I'll open the public hearing on this item, and I'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to add anything.
My name is Scott Nelson with ETR Architecture. I'm the project architect for the project. We have a couple of renderings that we did that show the promenade. If I could add that, this one probably shows the most direct. This is almost aligning with the opposite side of the street where you'd be on the promenade from Harriet Apartments, looking at the promenade down on the north side of our building. And we were proposing to have some pole lamps on the north side integrated in with the guardrail that would overlook the greenway, as well as there would be some up-down fixtures on the building itself, spaced between the windows as we go along. We're anticipating that we clearly want the promenade to be well lit at night and make it safe. We'd probably be interested also in having there's no gate. We've agreed to not have any gates so that this maintains public access at all times. We might be interested, it's actually wide enough to drive down. We don't want anyone driving on this. That we would do something of a removable bollard or something in the middle, but just so that no one would try to drive down this at some point. That's been brought up. It's also been brought up that it would be nice to have some kind of a pedestrian connection across both Grand and Pleasant on the other side, rather, because there'll be a lot of pedestrian connection between both, especially going between our east side of the building over to Carmel Plaza on the Cross Pleasant on the east side of our building. We have up-down lighting on all sides of the building on the first floor as well, cut-off fixtures near the entries. The street along Grand, which is individual first floor apartments, will have those as well. If there's any specific questions about this, I'd be happy to talk about them. What we do typically with these is we'll have an electric contractor that will bring on their lighting designer. We have to submit a complete photometric as part of our final PDR plan that Aaron and staff, as well as public work folks, will review. So
Because we talked a lot about pedestrian scale lighting and a building attached last time around. Glad to hear that's included. I might add that as a condition to make sure it gets fulfilled. I'm wondering why there's no landscaping along the promenade. Most other promenades up and down the Greenway have some level of landscaping.
Is in like trees and shrubs. We could look at that. We could add that if you wanted to make that a condition. I think we see it as a pedestrian way. Essentially, we'd have to make a fairly large tree grates, but we actually made it a little wider with this proposal than it was previously in order to reduce the amount of building coverage. We were slightly over with some changes we made due to the vacated alley. So if we wanted to say on the Greenway side, that might make the most sense as opposed to the building side. Having some tree grates every 20 feet or something like that might be nice. I think I would agree with that.
Okay. That's all the question.
All right. Are there any further questions of the applicant? If there are none, we can move on to any other speakers. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on item 7? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, we have several applications before us. 5. Commissioner Kronzer.
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve conditional. I make a motion to approve the conditional use permit with the one stated condition, item A.
We have a motion to approve item A, the conditional use permit. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Commissioner Kronzer, was there anything you'd like to add?
Not on that one, no.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Colgill,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Kronzer,
Aye.
Lipke-Pier,
Aye.
Magrino,
Aye.
Rockwell,
Aye.
Schrader,
Aye.
Slack, Sweezy. Aye. 8-0.
Motion carries. Commissioner Kronzer.
Yes, I'd make a motion to approve item B, variance to increase maximum allowable floor area ratio. With the one stated condition, I'd like to modify that slightly to include the pedestrian promenade shall be installed, including pedestrian scale lighting and landscaping as shown on the proposed plans to ensure proposed in the rest of the condition there. So adding pedestrian scale lighting and landscaping as called out.
All right. We have a motion to approve item B, the variance for FAR with the one stated condition, modifying it to also require landscaping and pedestrian scale lighting to the promenade design. Commissioner Rockwell, we should probably have a second on that.
Second.
We have a
I'll
second.
second, just with
And
clarification,
Commissioner Rockwell.
that the landscaping is not, in fact, the condition is not landscaping as shown on the proposed plans, but that it's new landscaping along the promenade. We'll lower that language a little
Maybe
bit.
we could add a sentence to the end of that condition saying work with staff to add additional landscaping to the promenade.
Sure. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve item B with some modifications to the one stated condition that the applicant work with staff to add landscaping and pedestrian scale lighting to the promenade. Commissioner Magrino.
And I was just going to make a general comment that a lot of the buildings that have been built along the Greenway haven't had super great promenade spaces, and this one actually is like kind of nice and simple and looks like we're actually encouraging people to use it. So thank you for saving some space for that, and hopefully as the rest of this area fills in, they can kind of copy your lead here.
Right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Colgill,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Kronzer,
Aye.
Lipke-Pier,
Aye.
Magrino,
Aye.
Rockwell,
Aye.
Schrader,
Aye.
Sweezy.
Aye.
8-0.
And that motion carries. Commissioner Kronzer.
Interior side yard setback from 13 feet to 3 feet. and from 13 feet to 5 feet for the balconies.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve variance C, which relates to setback variances. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Coghill,
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Cronzer.
Aye.
Lipke-Peer.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Schrader.
Aye.
Sweezy.
Aye.
8-0.
And that motion carries. Commissioner Kranz.
I'll make a motion to return the variance application for the eastern rear yard setback.
We have a motion and a second to return variance D. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Coghill,
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Cronzer.
Aye.
Lipke-Peer.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Schrader.
Aye.
Sweezy.
Aye.
8-0.
That motion carries. Finally, item E, Commissioner Kranzer.
Make a motion to approve the site plan as recommended with the 7 conditions, with a couple of modifications to those 7 conditions. Condition number 4, to match the condition on the floor area ratio variance, to state pedestrian promenade shall be installed as shown, including the pedestrian scale lighting, and adding a sentence at the end requesting the applicant to work with staff to add additional landscaping to the promenade. And number 6, to add a sentence at the back of number 6 to state the applicant shall install up-down lighting mounted on the first floor of the building on all sides of the building.
All right, we have a motion to approve item E, the site plan review, with some modifications to conditions 4 and 6 related to landscaping and pedestrian scale lighting. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Kranz.
I just want to say that I think this project really turned out well. As we all know, this area is really quite dark right now. With the addition of the promenade and the building mounted lighting, I think this will drastically change these few blocks here in Whittier. And I'm looking forward to having this project get out of the ground. So thank you. And
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Coghill,
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Cronzer.
Aye.
Lipke-Peer.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Schrader.
Aye.
Sweezy.
Aye.
8-0.
And that motion carries. That concludes our discussion on item 7. We'll move on to our final item for discussion tonight, which is item 8, 38th Street Station, and staff is Ms. Smith.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this is a project that has come before the Planning Commission in the past, in September of last year. This is a modified Phase 1 of a planned unit development that would include ultimately 2 phases. It's for the 38th Street Station development just to the west of the existing LRT station. As part of the 2017 action, this site was rezoned to the C3A, and the PO was retained as part of that. And overall, the site contains 6 single-family homes, an existing bus turnaround, but the Cardinal Bar is not actually part of the site. Here are some context photos to show you existing conditions. Just to the north of the site, there is a 64-unit building, the Station 38 Apartments. Here's a general site layout. So the Phase 1 would include the small triangular building just next to the LRT station. It would also include now a 5-story mixed-use building. Here's some renderings. You can see that, so both of these buildings are located to the north of the 38th Street East, whereas the second phase would be a smaller mixed-use building to the south of 38th Street. There would be 3 bus bays as well, a public plaza between the smaller triangular building and 38th Street, significant streetscape improvements, and bus circulation. So 30th Avenue South would be extended to wrap around through the middle of the site and then onto 29th Street. The buses would enter onto 30th from 38th Street and then exit onto 29th to the west. The applications that are required are a conditional use permit to allow the planned unit development, a variance to reduce the minimum window requirements on both of the buildings, which we can get into in a little bit, the site plan review for both new buildings, and a vacation of the existing residential alley that runs north-south in the site. So I'll start with the east building, the triangular building. This is modified from what was previously recommended. So there used to be 2 stories plus a mezzanine for a total of 3 stories. This it's 2 stories in height. The material palette has changed as well. The footprint has changed a little bit. The plaza now reflects the conditions of approval that were approved by the City Planning Commission last year. The first and second levels are commercial/office based on the plan submitted by the applicant. Oh, and I should mention that there's also now an entrance on the north side of the site, so that would better capture traffic coming from the light rail station. Here's the plaza, which does comply with the recommended conditions of approval. The elevations show that the proposed materials are brick, CMU, and bent plate steel. The west elevation faces the new public street, 30th Avenue South. And in the pedestrian-oriented overlay district, any windows that aren't within 2 feet above the adjacent grade are not counted towards the minimum window requirement, which is 40% between 2 and 10 feet on the ground floor for non-residential uses. So based on that measurement, the applicant is proposing a total of 5% between 2 and 10 feet above the adjacent grade, which is less than the 40% required. Staff does not find a practical difficulty in complying with this. For this variance, the City Planning Commission previously overturned the staff recommendation to deny, and the City Planning Commission approved the variance based on the applicant's statement that the ground floor use would be a restaurant tenant. The west building is the 5-story mixed-use building. There would be 4 commercial spaces, 144 dwelling units, and 132 at-grade stalls. You can see here there's a dynamic sign that's on the east elevation that would face the LRT station. Also, the light feature is included in the overall building height and so that makes the building 75.5 feet tall. There are 3 types of brick, 7 types of metal panel, stucco, CMU, and also fiber cement lap siding. So the number of exterior materials per elevation does exceed the amount in site plan review and requires alternative compliance. You can see on the floor plan where the 4 commercial uses are, and also you can see how the at-grade parking stalls are accessed. Some of the parking stalls would be exposed as viewed from above, so there's a courtyard area that partially covers the parking stalls, but there are some that would still be visible. There would be landscaping within the courtyard area and tree coverage. A variance is required on the north elevation of this building based on the measurements that I discussed in the previous building. So there's 19% openings between 2 and 10 feet above grade for the non-residential uses. Staff does find that there's a practical difficulty in this case because the site is surrounded by public streets on all 4 sides. Staff is recommending approval of the variance with the recommended condition that all of the openings that are proposed are at least screened with a decorative mesh metal panel. Here's the view from the south from 38th Street. Here's the view from 29th to the west. To the east, this is from the new public street 30th. Here's a signage plan submitted by the applicant. At this time, staff doesn't have enough information to do a full sign analysis for all of the signs that are initially proposed by the applicant. But we do have enough information about the dynamic sign that is proposed, and there is a sign alternative proposed through the conditional use permit. So that sign is a dynamic sign. The maximum in the zoning code is 32 square feet in area. And then this, let's see, I believe it would be 186 square feet in size. So that can be granted an alternative through the conditional use permit. So for the planned unit development, the applicant is required to provide at least 25 points worth of amenities based on the alternatives that they're requesting. Those alternatives include increasing the building height from the maximum 4 stories to 5 stories. The building placement in the PO, so the maximum distance from the property line is 8 feet, whereas there's some portions of each building that exceed 8 feet from the property line. And then the on-premise signs regulations that I just mentioned. Staff is recommending awarding 29 amenity points based on the applicant's submittal. For site plan review, as I mentioned, exterior materials are exceeding 3 per elevation on the west building. Also, along the north elevation of the west building, the ground floor active functions requirement is not met. 38% of that elevation is considered an active function, where 70% is the minimum requirement. And then for the east smaller building, alternative compliance is requested for natural observation, as the east side of that building is substantially inactive. There's a mural and stairways, so there's not a lot of activity that's going to be facing the LRT station on that side. So just a summary of some of the conditions that are included in the recommendation. We are recommending that the at-grade parking area in the west building have pedestrian connections to both public streets, both 30th and 38th Street. Right now, it's not clear how pedestrians would safely access each public sidewalk along those public streets. Also, there is a condition that just to make sure that all of the bicycle parking is provided for both the residential and non-residential uses. And then there's a condition related to the tree species that's proposed. It's in this location. It's on private property. It's Kentucky coffee tree. Staff is recommending that a smaller canopy tree be included in the final site plan, just because of the potential for a lot of height and width in this area, and we want to make sure that there's a lot of visibility retained in this corner. And then recommended conditions related to elevations, just making sure that each ground level tenant complies with the minimum window requirement. Also, we want to, want to make sure that the window area that's currently proposed on the east elevation is not reduced in the final plans. And then more of a general condition that the applicant shall work with staff to try to simplify the overall material palette for the west building, and in doing so also try to make it more compatible with the east building so that it appears to be a more complementary type of development. I wanted to mention that there's a memo in your packet tonight that just corrects a few square footage summaries for the site plan review, but also eliminates one of the bicycle parking conditions that was a mistake that it was included. So the bicycle parking condition that I just summarized is the correct one. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
All right, commissioners, are there any questions of Commissioner Kronzer?
Could you go over the west elevation of the east building one more time?
Yep.
And Mei Ling, on that same topic, maybe you could just remind us, as I remember last fall when the window coverage variance was approved, I believe a condition was added that we basically split the difference and added a condition that the window height be at least or no more than 2 feet 6 inches. Am I
believe that was
remembering
the
that
dimension.
correctly? Okay.
Right, so this is a brand-new application, so we're still evaluating it from scratch. So
Right.
based on the 2-foot requirement, it's not meeting the minimum window requirement. Um,
And is that because the windows don't go down to 2 feet?
Yes,
So,
So if they went down to 2 feet, they would count.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the variance would not be required. So the applicant hasn't specified who or what type of tenant it would be. It'd be a commercial or office tenant. That's what's specified on the floor plans. So being consistent with our previous recommendation, we're recommending denial. We don't find that there's a practical difficulty.
All right. Are there any further questions of staff? Commissioner Kogia.
Could you go over the plaza one more time and I'm wondering about just trees generally on the space. Are any of them going to be on a boulevard space, or are they all within the private land?
So that's a very, very good question. So the ones that you see highlighted in green in this plan, those would be on private property, but also there would be 3, it looks like there are maybe 6 total trees that are in the public right-of-way that are adjacent to the plaza. Those would be included in the overall totals. So yes, there would be both.
Okay. Commissioner Ellison.
Can you confirm, get the email about the back alley walkway? Is that going to still exist? Just confirm.
Yes, thank you. I can address that. So I think I need a different. So I believe the community member's question was whether there was still going to be access kind of wrapping around the north of the site. And this shows 2 public sidewalks on either side of 30th Avenue South. So there would be a walkway. Yep.
And are there any further questions of staff? If there are none, I'll open the public hearing at this time. I'd like to ask the applicant to speak first. And please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Beth Pfeiffer, 5640 Logan Avenue South. Commissioners, thank you for having me tonight. On behalf of the Lander Group, I just wanted to very briefly speak to how excited we are to be helping fulfill part of the comprehensive plan and do a transit-oriented development here at this highly visible 38th Street station. This project wouldn't be able to come together if it weren't for the cooperation of Metro Transit, the City of Minneapolis, the applicant, Public Works, a lot of people working together to make this really a pedestrian-friendly asset to this community and this neighborhood. The Lander Group recently moved their offices just last week into the Standish-Derrickson neighborhood, so it's definitely a neighborhood that they support and feel strongly about. And we're very excited, in addition to be doing the building and the development here, the recreation of Public Plaza and art, to be working with the neighborhood organization on an exciting mural project. We're currently working on a community designed mural, and the theme will be "You Belong Here." And what does that question mean to everybody who steps off the train, walks through the neighborhood, lives here, shops here? What does "You Belong Here" mean to them? So really beyond building buildings, Lander Group is really looking to build community and build public realm. We do have a few comments back to some of the conditions that were included in the staff report, and I'll introduce Kim Brethheim from LHB to respond to those. But if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, are there any questions of the speaker? None just yet, thanks.
Commission members, thank you. I'd like to point out a couple of the conditions that we would encourage consideration. First, while we have enough amenity points as staff has approved, I'd like to bring your attention to the shared biking points that were denied. We've been working with Nice Ride, and the technology on the docked shared bike parking is going to be changing in 3 years. And we strongly encourage use of bikes in various ways. The requirement for the project is 72 residential and 20 commercial parking stalls, 92. We asked for to provide 50 additional and for 142 by using for those 3 points. What we actually have is 258 bike parking stalls. They are provided 73 inside below grade for the residences, 51 in a storage building adjacent to the transit station. 18 are the shared Nice Ride stalls, and 116 are distributed around the perimeter of the site in the right-of-way. We think that that's consistent with the long-term plan for Nice Ride and the desire to provide ample parking around the entire site in close proximity to various entrances. So we would encourage your consideration to grant those amenity points for the shared parking, given the number of bike parking stalls we're providing in excess of the requirement. Next, on condition A10, related to the prohibition of signage on the east side of the east building. The east building, because of its geometry, is a four-sided building, and some of the entrances to the building are located on that east side, including access that might be the primary access to the upper level of the building or lower level of the building. We agree with the idea that, or the stipulation that sign and package should come back for staff review beyond what is currently submitted, but we would encourage the commission to not reject or allow for the provision of the signage on the east side of that building, but rather make that a part of the future staff review for the sign package in its totality. Next, on the item of the variance for the windows on the west side of the east building, as staff pointed out and was questioned, we're trying to be consistent with the prior approval. We have more than 40% of the window area. The issue is the sill height. We are proposing the 30-inch sill. The condition last time was noted that it would be a restaurant, and staff correctly indicated that we cannot commit to it being a restaurant. We can commit, we hope it's a restaurant, but it's general commercial. And until there's a signed tenant in that space, it would be, could be general office, it could be some range of commercial space. I'd just say we hope it's a restaurant space, but we can't commit that at this time. There was one condition that had been in the report related to the north side of the west building that we agree with, but I just want to clarify that in the minutes that were handed out in this, that item is not included in this statement. We just want to make sure that it is included in the approval. Item C became item D in this. So, so then on the staff report, item C5 related to the site plan review and the various entrances around the site. As was pointed out, the circulation on the north side of the site will be maintained so that from 29th to the light rail station, that primary circulation will continue. The primary circulation to the station continues in terms of the cross paths across 38th. We are adding the controlled intersections to encourage that pedestrian crosswalk. But across the bike new road, there are 3 pedestrian crosswalks that are provided. And we're trying to keep the circulation around the large building at the perimeter. The surface parking that's in the middle of the building is for visitor parking to residences and the commercial space around there. It's not for use by transit users. It might be, but it's primarily for commercial. The residential access from that for guests, there are doors on the interior side of the building to 2 different elevator lobbies for visitors who park in that area. Then we want to encourage commercial residents or commercial users to use the alley that's between the Cardinal and the new building. So that though that alley is activated between the Cardinal Bar and the new construction. There are two access road points into the parking ramp that are primarily geared for vehicles. And then there is one connection towards the northwest end where people coming from the west side can go through the parking and cut through. So we're trying to encourage access primarily to the alley, to that new alley, landscaped alley, but not puncture and have uncontrolled access around at many points into that garage. So we would encourage accepting the circulation into the garage for pedestrian access as submitted. Next up, it would be item D9, which addresses the issue of the elevations of the buildings. And the suggestion to reduce the material palette. And we think the plan as proposed is consistent with the Minneapolis Plan for Sustainable Growth policies addressing scale and form in traditional urban form making. We're trying to break down a large-scale development into smaller, discrete forms, each form having a different vocabulary of materials. It would be, I would say, traditional development would be perhaps more consistent with the development along Hennepin, large-scale development with Whole Foods that has consistent material elevations and massing for an entire block. We're trying to not do it that way. We're trying to break it into smaller, discrete building forms with intentionally different materials, each reflecting orientation to the street, each respecting scale and developing it at a pedestrian level. So we would encourage, while we can further develop elevations and refine the elevations, we think the intent of the material massing is appropriate as submitted. Finally, on item D11, related to the tree species, we had worked with the forester in the selection of the tree species, and Craig Pinkla was the one who suggested using the coffee tree. So we think that that species as submitted, both in form and durability for urban environment, is appropriate as submitted. Those are the conditions for which we would request your consideration. So thank you to staff and commission for the consideration.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Lukey-Peer.
Just one quick question on the graphic you have up right now. Can you just the green arrows around the Cardinal Bar, are those pedestrian or vehicular? Because
those are pedestrian.
Okay, super. I wasn't sure because it looks like one leads into a curb cut, so I wasn't sure.
So there are two vehicular. They're the dark blue.
Uh-huh.
And there are three pedestrian.
Okay, so it just reads like a curb cut there in your.
And then there are two interior for access to the housing portion.
Thanks.
All right. Any further questions of the applicant? Commissioner Cogill?
Are all the access points to the residential portion of the building on the interior,
No.
aside from individual residences?
So there are also direct access to the outside. So there are two entry vestibules. It's one building. There's a corridor that links all the way around to those 2 points. There's also a stair door that is independent of lobbies that exits on grade. Also, there are numerous entrances to commercial space from each commercial space directly to the sidewalk frontage.
Commissioner Kranz.
At the intersection of 29th and 30th, kind of the northwest corner of the, what are the grades like right there?
So there's a slight uphill gradient as you go north on 29th, so that the road that's on the north side of the building is roughly 2 feet above the parking level. So if you take the parking level and the commercial spaces being level throughout the site, the grade is slightly higher on that north road.
Okay, so if I'm a pedestrian walking around that corner, it looks like I'm getting pushed into the tactile for the curb cut. Is there enough sidewalk there to turn the corner if I'm a wheelchair?
So
without
there's
getting my wheel on, you know what I'm asking?
right. So there is a tight corner it's a regular sidewalk on that north side. On the south side of the new road, it's like a regular city street sidewalk, 6 feet or so. On the north side is the existing one that's getting rebuilt in the same place.
Okay.
So there are two roughly 6-foot sidewalks that are parallel on either side of that roadway.
So getting to the intersection of 29th, right there, it looks like the sidewalk's getting pinched as the radius of the pedestrian ramp.
Can
you look at you might have to add
whether
some
it has to be
sidewalk.
pulled back in a bit on the interior, on the lot line side. Okay.
All right. Are there any further questions of the applicant? Commissioner Rockwell.
Sorry, could you just clarify again what you were talking about with the sign condition? You're referring to A10, and you are essentially asking us to.
And I might just clarify. So in the revised staff recommendation, mailing, that sign-related condition has been removed. Maybe you could just clarify that, and I think you addressed it in your presentation, that maybe you determined that wasn't necessary.
President Brown, I'm not sure how the numbering is lining up.
Okay.
But, so the memo says A10, that has to do with bicycle parking. There's actually the signage reference that they're talking about is not stated as a condition of approval. It's within the staff report, just stating that signage is not allowed on the east building wall. It's actually prohibited because it doesn't face a public street, and therefore it's not considered a primary building wall. So it would be difficult for the Planning Commission to explicitly state otherwise because it's a prohibited use.
So basically, if they desired to have signage on that wall, they would need to apply for a variance at a later date.
A variance would not be possible because it's a prohibited use, so it can't be.
Oh,
varied.
I see. I
Yep.
see. Commissioner Rockwell.
Sorry, and that's the east wall of the east building that faces the train station, right?
Yes.
Just so I understand. Okay. So, and we're saying that because it's facing a train, because there's an intermediate use between Hiawatha
and the
and
public
the building.
street. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That one could not have a sign on it as the code defines it.
That's right.
Thank you.
So
yes.
on the drawing A2.09 MU2 is the sign package for that building. The top drawing is that elevation. The large gray area is the art sign. So that's the piece of art. Similarly, fronts faces the train station. And what we're suggesting is that on that elevation, there are two doors that could be the entrance to the upstairs or to the downstairs for the commercial space. And that along there, the sign package as submitted proposed 4-foot by 4-foot signs that could be located at those doors. So in the staff report, when it says that that can't be done, we are suggesting that we are asking you to not make that denial at this point, and say that as a part of the overall development of the sign package, that could be considered as part of that application for the final site plan. So in the package that is submitted, there are drawings for the signs, proposed signs of all buildings. And we agree that we have to come back with a development for those signs. We are just asking you to not reject or prohibit including signs on that east elevation of the east building at this time.
Commissioner Lukey Pier.
I just had a question for staff in regard to, is this more of a return of this one particular item for us to not consider tonight? Or is this, I guess I'm trying to see how, it sounds to me like the applicant's saying consider it later when we do the whole sign package, even though staff's saying it's impossible regardless, but then it could be impossible then as well. Is this a question of getting a specific item returned or continued, or is this just, I guess I'm asking for direction from staff in terms of what the options are for this.
Sure. Commissioners, if I'm not mistaken, and as Ms. Smith pointed out, there is no recommended condition of approval that addresses this specific issue. There is a reference in the staff report. Just one point of clarification that one can ask for a variance to allow signage on non-primary building wall, but that's not something that's in front of you at the moment.
So I'm correct in that it's not an application in front of us necessarily today. Anyway, so it's us. We aren't able to take action one way or the other on that particular item. It's just a reference to a sentence in the report itself.
That's my understanding.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
All right. Are there any further questions of the applicant? If there are none, we can move on to some other speakers. And is there anyone who would like to speak on this item? Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Gail McLeod. I live on 29th Avenue. And I guess I just wanted to make a quick comment. I'm very supportive of the project in general, but I had a question regarding the buses. And the way that I look at the design right now is the buses will be turning on 29th, and I'm just generally concerned with the increased pollution generated by diesel buses coming to turn around on 29th Avenue. And also, even when I look at the rendering and the map here, how they possibly will be able to turn, given the fact that on each side of the streets, you'll have cars parked. One of them will be reserved, from what I understand, for the residents, so where their houses are. And then the other side will be for anybody for shopping, etc. So anyway, in general, I guess my main concern is really around the buses and the pollution generated by the buses. Unless the electric buses, it will increase the diesel fumes that we experience living in the area. So,
all right. And I might just quickly ask staff or the applicant to speak to that a little bit, talk a little bit about the bus circulation, just to answer those questions.
Thank you. That's a great question. So one of the things that I want to point out, I don't really have a pointer, is that so the way that the buses will circulate through the site is that they will be on 30th is where the bus bays will be, the new 30th Avenue. So any idling of a bus, stopping and standing of the bus would happen on 30th, not on 29th. 29th will be where the buses are just coming through. There's not a bus stop on 29th. So all of the activity of the buses, more similar to how they do at the bus turnaround today, 30th Avenue is roughly in the same position as the current bus turnaround. So the activity of the buses will happen on 30th. The new 29th Avenue is being improved for the weight of the buses and a signal being added to help control for appropriate timing and traffic and pedestrian movement through the site, but there won't be stopping and standing of the buses on 29th. Also, these plans have been developed with Metro Transit to make sure that all turning radiuses, all loading requirements, all lighting requirements meet their design standards. So they have reviewed and approved these drawings before they could come to you, and they had to submit a letter, I believe, with our land use application saying that they have reviewed the plans.
All right. And the speaker was, I think, also kind of asking about what the proposed parking situation will be on 29th Avenue. Will there be any restrictions there, and how does that interact with the
29th
traffic?
Avenue will be essentially 2 lanes moving south and 1 lane moving north. There will not be parking on 29th Avenue. We are working with one resident who currently has a signed handicap accessible parking space in front of their home. And we are working with them and Public Works to make sure that we find an adequate location to meet their needs for that space.
All right. Thank you. And is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Anyone else? See no one, I will close the public hearing. And commissioners, we have several applications before us. I'll note that one of the variance applications was left off of the agenda that was published. So there are actually a total of, let's see here, a total of 5 applications. So there's the conditional use permit for the planned unit development, 2 variances related to window requirement, a site plan review, and an alley vacation. Are there any further questions? Would someone like to start things off with a motion? Commissioner Rockwell.
Sorry, Mailing, a clarifying question for you on the pedestrian entrances suggested condition. Could you maybe use Kim's picture to show what the what your suggestion is versus their suggestion is?
Okay. I haven't decided, I don't design the project, but I think that the general feeling is that if you were to access the parking area, if you're a member of the public trying to access the parking area from 30th, you would have to actually go through this curb cut with the proposed floor plan. So this is the blue arrow that they're talking about. This is where the vehicular access is. I think it's not clear. I think one of the intentions of the condition is to just at least clarify. So if there are connections that exist, to make that a little bit more spelled out so we know where pedestrians entering and exiting doors. It doesn't, right now it's not very apparent how that works. This is a courtyard. So this is where the building wall ends and this is where the courtyard is. So I'd like to know more about where the walkways are, if that's truly a connection to the parking area. So the intent is to have better connection to the east side and also to the south side. We do see that there is a pedestrian connection on the west side adjacent to 29th.
Got it. So I mean, this could be accomplished in a lot of different ways. This could be accomplished with clear signage. This could be, it's not necessarily, this isn't about like punching a new walkway through this necessarily. This is about clarifying how you get in, how you get out, and making sure that that is clear to the public from a pedestrian standpoint.
I would agree with that. Right now, it's not clear. Right now, I would say there's not enough clarity on how that happens on both sides.
Okay, and sorry, but just to clarify, the staff's intent is really about creating that clarity and not about a particular tool.
Well, right now, it doesn't seem that it does exist. I would say that my interpretation of the plans is that there is not a direct pedestrian connection to the parking area, between the parking area and sidewalk on those sides. So if that does exist, then it should be clarified, but right now it doesn't appear to exist.
Okay, great, thank you.
Are there any further questions? And I think maybe the applicant has a response to that.
I just point out, and this is section on A2.03. So this is the courtyard with the looking west. There is a ramp that goes down. This is of the east wall of the building that faces the Cardinal Alley. And this is the walkway that goes over the ramp at that point. So this is a section that looks here. And so you can walk into the courtyard and go to the parking or vice versa at that point.
Can we see how those connections tie into where the parking spaces are? Because I think I see Mailing's point. It's not an intuitive wayfinding sort of thing. So I'm wondering how that ties in, like where it spits people out at once they get back there even.
So this is the drawing that Mei Ling had up. So this is all this pavered alley with twinkle lights, Copenhagen lights over the top of it. This continues back to a point, and there's a light wall feature here. And then at that point, you can go into that courtyard.
And it's open circulation around the light wall?
Yes.
Okay, so there's open circulation from the east and from the south, but there is up through there. That's the circulation pattern.
Yes.
Where's the wall that keeps people from falling down into that ramp? That they're going on a bridge and then all of a sudden, but when they turn left, I mean, if there is a
this ramp goes down starting at this point, and there is a divider piece at that point.
All right. Any further questions on this?
Is the light wall going to contain? I mean, if I was walking there, I would be wondering if I was going that way because you're looking at the back of the trash enclosure or something. It looks like.
So those are the transformers.
Okay, so the back of the transformers.
So that's screening the transformers from the street side.
Will there be signage or something that where if I'm walking, I'm not just wondering if I'm going into a dead end because there's no visual, given that tunnel, you're focused on. So there's no, you wouldn't know ahead of time that there's two ways out of that. This kind of looks like a dead end if you were walking even straight from 38th going north. So will there be some sort of signage or something that indicates to people, look, you can still keep walking?
I think that wayfinding suggestion will need to be developed as part of that sign package.
Thanks.
Any further questions on that topic or any other topic? If there are none, again, we have 5 applications before us. Would someone like to start things off with a motion? Further questions or discussion? Commissioner Kronzer.
I will start off with a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the conditional use permit with the 10 stated conditions.
All right, we have a motion to approve the conditional use permit with the 10 stated conditions. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Coghill,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Kranzer,
Aye.
Lipke-Peer,
Aye.
Magrino,
Aye.
Rockwell,
Aye.
Schrader,
Aye.
Sweezy. Aye. 8-0.
That motion carries. Next, we can consider the first of the 2 variances, the one related to the east building. Commissioner Kronzer.
Item B on the staff report, variance to reduce the minimum window requirement in the east building. I would make a motion to support staff recommendation, deny that variance.
Do we have a motion to deny variance B? Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Rockwell.
Clarify, so this is to essentially reduce, to require a reduction to 2 feet for the sill.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Commissioner
And
Rockwell.
I'll just speak a word. I too don't find a practical difficulty here at 6 inches. I've been very careful in our PO districts as of late to require certain sill heights. You can accomplish this very simply. So I don't think this is a large issue here.
And is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to deny variance B related to the window requirement on the east building. Clerk, please call the roll.
Coghill,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Kranzer,
Aye.
Lipke-Peer,
Aye.
Magrino,
Aye.
Rockwell,
No.
Schrader,
Aye.
Sweezy. Aye. 7-1.
And that motion carries. Next, we have item C, which is the variance for the window requirement on the west building. Commissioner Kranz.
I'll move staff recommendation to approve the variance with the one stated condition to install the decorative metal screens on the openings to the parking.
Right. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance for the window requirement on the west building. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Cronzer.
Aye.
Lipke-Peer.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Schrader.
Aye.
Sweezy.
Aye.
8-0.
Motion carries. Next, we have the site plan review. Commissioner Kranz.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan review with the 11 stated conditions with a modification to number 5. And I'll take a stab at this and see how the commission thinks. Changing number 5 to work with staff to improve the pedestrian access and wayfinding from the east side of the site into the at-grade parking.
Right. We have a motion and a second to approve the site plan review with the stated conditions. I'll note that condition number 10 was removed from the revised staff recommendation, so there are only 10 conditions now, with a modification to condition 5 related to improving the pedestrian access and wayfinding to the park.
And to modify the square footages as identified in the staff memo at today's meeting.
Yes. And so we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Rockwell.
Sorry, clarification again. Are you, is the motion to improve, is this focused on the wayfinding or on the wayfinding and the actual passageways?
The motion or the condition was to work with staff to improve pedestrian access and wayfinding.
Okay. And this is, I think, let's repeat the language that's in the current condition. From the north-south public sidewalk along 30th Avenue.
Yeah.
And east-west sidewalk along 30th. Correct.
All right.
And commissioners, if I could just provide a little bit, flesh that out a little bit more. It's not necessarily, as I understand it correctly, that the applicant is going to have to change the plans, but if they sort of clarify in the plans to satisfaction of staff that they are providing satisfactory access, that be made more clear, including that they provide wayfinding on the site.
Correct. Right. My anticipation, personal anticipation, not part of the motion, is that this is accomplishable in many different ways, that it is clear how a pedestrian can get from these two different streets to the interior. However that is accomplished, working with staff.
Okay. And is there any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Cogill.
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Cronzer.
Aye.
Lipke-Peer.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Schrader.
Aye.
Sweezy.
Aye.
8-0.
That motion carries. Finally, we have the alley vacation. Commissioner Kranz.
Make a motion to approve the vacation of the alley as stated.
We have a motion and a second to approve the alley vacation. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Cogill.
Aye.
Ellison.
Aye.
Cronzer.
Aye.
Lipke-Peer.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Schrader.
Aye.
Sweezy.
Aye.
8-0.
And that motion carries. That concludes our discussion on item 8. Our only other item for discussion tonight, we need to select officers for 2018. We had a nominating committee, and Commissioner Sweezy, would you provide an update?
Thank you, President Brown. The nominating committee was Commissioner Kronzer, Commissioner Slack, and me, and we solicited requests both for nominations and interest for our officer spots. And on behalf of the nominating committee, we nominate President Brown for another term as president, Commissioner Lupke-Pier to be vice president, and Commissioner Rockwell to be secretary.
All right, and I will take that as a motion to elect those officers. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? And that motion carries. So we're set for another year. Otherwise, we have committee of the whole this Thursday. We also have an executive committee meeting beforehand at 3:30. We'll be talking about the 2040 plan, and there will be lots of volunteer opportunities for all of you associated with that. So it should be exciting. Otherwise, we are adjourned.